All right, welcome to another episode of The Real Deal. This is my take on 9/11. This is part three, my final spot of talking about September 11th and what happened there in 2001. We all know what happened. Listen to my other two podcasts, parts one and part two, which led up to this one, obviously part three. So, right after that incidents happened, everything just started collapsing around, people coming up with stuff. The government passed rules, and suspicion was already out there that the government had something to do with this, the United States government. And they passed the United States Patriot Act. And what that did is it gave a lot of power. It freed up our government and our government agencies, federal agencies, the CIA, the NSA, to even have more power than they already did. They used it as an excuse to fight terrorism. But they were going after so-called organized crime or drug trafficking or all kinds of things, minor prostitution. I mean, they were going after everything. They started doing background checks on everybody and anybody. Started doing all kinds of stuff, tracking phones, everything. And then after the 9/11 attacks, and that if that wasn't enough to raise suspicion, we went to war. Like I said, we went to war with Afghanistan. Now, in 1998, the Unocal Corporation was getting a hold of Afghanistan, Turkmenistan also, and they wanted to put a pipeline over there, a natural gas pipeline. Afghanistan said no. They were being run by the Taliban and they didn't want any part of an American corporation. Unocal was kissing their butt, invited them to Texas, did all kinds of stuff trying to get them there, and they said no, we don't want it. United States government kind of stepped up and was helping Unocal and trying to communicate, trying to work this out and saying, you know what, maybe we can all get along and work on this. And they said, no, we don't want it here. Keep your stuff over there. So basically they canceled it. The Taliban said no. But after we were over there in Afghanistan, they started working on that. They started coming up with stuff. It never got completed because of the war and everything. But it was one of the things they started to do. And it made people suspicious. Now, first of all, the Middle East is loaded with oil. Now, America has a lot of oil resources, but I don't know why we don't use them. If Texas was its own nation with its oil and helium and things like that they have down there, they would be in the top 10 economies in the world. So why don't we use Texas oil? Oil in Alaska is pretty good too. Seward's Folly turned out to be a pretty good deal for us from Russia. I know they regret that. Would love to have it back. With the technology now, we know we have a lot of things up there. So why do we depend on the Middle East so much? So when you go over and fight a war in the Middle East, the first thing anybody's going to be is suspicious. The first thing they're going to say is no blood for oil. Now, America went over there saying that Osama was over there. That's where he was, and that's who did all this. He probably was over in Afghanistan. So that was the reason for the war. So speaking of the pipeline, the TAP pipeline is there today. It's still underway. Let me go back to that. It's still underway. They're still working on it. It's not completed. But imagine that. We were in Afghanistan for 20 years. I mean, it just ended a few years ago, right? It's horrific. Why were we there? Why were we there so long? Trying to take over. So in 2003, we invaded Iraq. Now, Saddam Hussein, who was the leader of Iraq at that time, he had been our friend for years. We were okay with him and some of the things he did, like when he was controlling his people, gassing the Kurds. We did a lot with him with that stuff. And we had a lot going on with him and his people over there. And then he went to Kuwait, invaded Kuwait. We didn't like that. We went over there. Then he chilled out for a while. But then we started saying that he was involved, and by we, you know who I mean, the United States government, George W. Bush and all the cronies, Dick Cheney, all those guys, they were saying Saddam was involved somehow. No, again, another Middle Eastern country full of oil, full of gas, natural gas. So we went and invaded them. And, you know, we were okay when he was gassing the Kurds. But then we're like, no, we're going to go get him and stuff. And, you know, he was a friend of ours. So then they said, he's helping Osama. He's helping the terrorist. He was behind it. There was no proof. None of the terrorists, none of the Islamic terrorists on those jets that flew in there or any of the people connected had anything to do with Afghanistan, Kuwait, Iraq. They weren't from any of those countries. But hey, let's go invade them, right? Let's get these oil-rich countries, get these weapons of mass destruction. So the United Nations told Saddam, well, we're coming to investigate. We're coming into your country. Now it's his country. He doesn't have to let them in. I personally don't like the United Nations. I think it's too powerful, and I think it's a joke. And I think it should be shut down, and there's too much control there. We'll get in that in another day, and I'll point out all the reasons why, and you'll agree with me on this. So he said, no, you can't come in. So they said, well, that's not right. We can do whatever we want. And he's like, no, you can't. You're not coming in my country. So they never did. Never did. Now, we went in there under the premise of finding weapons of mass destruction. We were there for years and never found any weapons of mass destruction. They said he had links to terrorists. There was never any links found. There was no truth to any of this. It was just an excuse to go invade oil-rich nations. Now, in the Iraq War, we had 4,500 servicemen, this estimate, were killed over there. About 30-some thousand were wounded. Others were traumatized because America was over there testing out new weapons, chemical weapons, doing all kinds of stuff. I talked to a lot of soldiers over there. I've talked to soldiers. They'd tell me about some of the things they'd put in their coffee, and they'd be up for a week, and they didn't know what it was, you know? And, I mean, they did all kinds of stuff over there. And with the insurgents and the civilians over there, guess how many people we killed? Well, there's no exact amount, but it's an estimate, and this is our country telling us this, not their country. Their country will tell you it's 5 million. There's 500,000 people that we killed. About 500,000 people in Iraq. And we were there for 8 years. Now, World War II was fought in only 4 years. And yes, there were a lot more countries, but we accomplished more. And there was actually a reason to be over there. Don't even get me started on that. But we conquered over there and came back home because of the Nazis in 4 years. And we helped all these other countries out. So we were over there in Iraq for 8 years. What was accomplished? Nothing. We captured Saddam. We found him. They found him in a foxhole, a hole in the ground. And when he went to court, and I don't know if you've ever seen his court trial, it is interpreted, and I have an Arabic friend that told me everything he was saying was pretty much accurate, interpreted into the English. The courts threw him under the bus. It was a folly. The courts were going after him. He didn't have a chance on this. And he came out and started talking about the United States. He threw the United States under the bus. He started talking about the things the United States did, the things they did with him, the things they did with a lot of his people. He named names, people. He gave names. He gave dates. He gave times. And, of course, they didn't want to hear it because more than likely it was the truth. He defended himself. They wanted him dead. They found him guilty of all these crimes, even though there was no weapons of mass destruction, no terrorist links. They said, well, you did this, that, and the other. And they said, well, you killed all these people. It's like, you know what? The United States was here helping me when that happened. They were responsible for that. Oh, no. And America had this Islamic judge in power over there. He was Iraqi. And so he's going to do what he's told to do by the people paying him. And I'm sure he got a hefty sum for it. They found him guilty. They sentenced him to death. He wanted to be shot to death. but they hanged him. And he said the U.S. was in on his war crimes. He said that all the way to the die, till he died. And he claimed, and I believe him, that him and his fellow inmates were tortured. And I can see that, you know. And they executed him. They hanged him. Now, like I said, he threw the United States under the bus. And if you know the American history and the things we've done in other countries and to other countries, I believe him. We always have this ulterior motive going on, you know, and somehow it gets justified. Somehow it gets justified that's like, well, just like in World War II, they knew what the concentration camps were going on. There were people in World War II, American soldiers, that would come to a concentration camp. They thought it was a German training facility. They thought it was the Nazis. So they're armed, ready to go in firing. They didn't even know what they were up against. But the powers that be knew they were there. They never tried to shut them down. They never tried to destroy the railroad lines, which would keep from more people getting in there and massacred. The American government is corrupt. Always has been, and it's getting worse on a daily basis. So let's jump back into the 9/11 conspiracies. Osama Bin Laden did it all. Now, this is a 6'4" Arabic man, Middle Eastern, and, he was on dialysis. Now, they try to say now that he wasn't, but he had kidney problems, and he'd been on dialysis for a long time. So he was living up in the mountains of Afghanistan in the beginning when a lot of this stuff went down, and they had setups up there. I mean, if you go to the Middle East, if you go to these other countries, you'll see it, and you'll hear it from other people, and you'll see pictures, videos, and whatnot. They have underground tunnels. They have cities underground. They have cities in the walls of the mountains. I mean, it's very sophisticated. They know what they're doing. Now, let me say this. After 9/11, after they said Osama Bin Laden did all this, George W. Bush had all of Osama Bin Laden's family rounded up, and in a good way, gave them money and security, and had them escorted out of the country for their protection, so they said. Gave them flights to wherever they wanted to go and helped them reestablish where they were with our taxpayers' money. This is true, people. Now, you're going to go Google this, and you're going to be like, well, Google said this. Google lies. Google lies a lot. That's how they're able to control you. Social media lies. You want to look for something, you got to dig deep. They censor this stuff. They don't want you to know the truth. Now, Osama, he escaped. We never did catch him until we caught up with him in Pakistan. There is no Palestine. Caught up with him in Pakistan. Navy SEAL Team 6 went in there. And they killed him. They got into this building and they killed everybody. There was no pictures taken. There was no proof that it was him, except hearsay from the soldiers that were there. And here's the thing with Pakistan. The USA was not allowed in Pakistan. Our military is not allowed there. We never should have been there. We had no legal right to be there. That was wrong. And I personally feel Osama was dead before all this took place. Because as much as we were bombing the mountains, I'm sure that caved in, hit his home and caved in on him. I think he'd been dead for years, but they got to make it look good. And this was a huge violation of sovereignty to go there in a country illegally and kill somebody like that. How would you feel if somebody flew into Boston looking for somebody that did something wrong? How would you feel if Iran flew into Boston, killed a bunch of people, and flew out of there? I know you'd all be mad about that. I would. I wouldn't want it. So what we did was wrong on there. So they had DNA from his sister. So they tested it on him and said, oh, yep, that's him. All right. So then, instead of burying the body, as Muslim culture calls for, you have to be buried within 24 hours. What they did is they wrapped him in a white sheet, put him in a big bag, and dumped his body in the North Arabian Sea. And they did it quickly. They said there wasn't enough time to find a place to bury him because none of these other countries wanted him, which I don't believe. A lot of people loved this man because a lot of these people thought that maybe he did do it, in the Middle East, and they hate America. They hate the United States. We give them reason to hate us sometimes. But I don't believe none of this stuff is true. They said they looked at nobody wanted them. No Middle Eastern country wanted them. Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, nobody wanted them. So they wrapped him up, dropped him in the Arabian Sea because they said, well, if we bury him somewhere, the Muslims will use that as a shrine and they'll go there and he'll be a martyr. He's a martyr anyway if he did do it. But they said it would be a shrine. Now, Muslim culture, like a lot of cultures, you don't enshrine the grave, you pay memory to it. You don't go worship a dead body. You don't praise them with all these gifts and make it into a temple or anything, because that's not allowed. So there's no reason to do that. There was no reason to do that, except they said, we can't negotiate a burial. There's not enough time. Now, there was 40 people on SEAL Team 6 at this time. It was right after this, just a few days after this happened, because people started questioning this. People started putting things out there on the internet, and they started going, they had websites back then, and they started putting things out there about the 9/11, and they didn't believe a lot of the stuff the government was saying. And one of the things they were saying was SEAL Team 6, some of the guys had come forward and said they didn't think it was Osama. Didn't look like him. It just looked like some Arabic guys. And the next thing you know, a couple days later, there was a major helicopter crash which took out 30 of the SEAL Team 6 people. Right after the raid, just a few days. Now, the ones you'll read about online, the ones that were in charge, swear up and down it was him. Well, of course. Do you think they're going to sit there and say it's not him? You don't think they got rewarded for this? They know what they're doing. Why did those 30 men, this is SEAL Team 6, helicopters. They know what they're doing. It's not like they just jumped in and took off. These guys know what they're doing. How suspicious is that? What are the odds of that happening, people? Stop and think about that. Right after the raid, people started questioning the raid. Some of the people were like, I don't think it was him. Boom, you're gone. People, I only come to you with the truth. I want you to know the truth because I want you to wake up and realize we get lied to on a daily basis. When you read the history books now, they're so sugar-coated. They're so watered down. They don't tell you the truth about what happened. They just tell you what they want you to believe what happened. History is written by the winners. The victors get to tell the stories, whether they're right or wrong. And 9/11 was a very tragic event. I don't know for a fact that the government was involved, but I do think there's many things that I've talked about with you that raise many suspicions. Many, many suspicions. I do believe Islamic terrorists attacked us, but I do believe that we were kind of on a stand down. I believe they saw it coming. There's a lot of proof that there was. I've shown you that. I've talked to you about that. There was proof. They knew there were attacks coming. Why didn't they up security? People, I'm just trying to open your mind, let you think freely. Use your brains, people. That's what you were given for. Use your rationality. Don't believe everything you're told by the United States government. Our government is corrupt. They lie. They cheat. They're crooks. The difference between most presidents and Richard M. Nixon, who was impeached and had to resign, is he got caught. Most of these other presidents, most of these people in power in America, most of the people up at the corporations, they don't get in trouble because they got money. They got clout. They know how to get away with it. So people, keep your eyes open. Keep your mind open. Don't believe everything you see on Google. Don't believe everything somebody posts on social media. And there's going to be a lot of misinformation on podcast. But I'm coming at you with the truth because I don't lie. Because I don't give falsehoods to anybody. I tell you the truth. That's what we're supposed to do in this world. And that's what I'm going to keep on doing. So keep tuning in and listening, people. Stay real. Peace.